learning approach that I work with traversing and navigating systems to make meaning out of situations. In other words, I question everything every day to try and find whether there's justice for the individual who cannot speak for themselves. During my career experience in my current workplace, which is BQA, Botswana Qualifications Authority, there were some investigations that were carried out and reports were produced. And these investigations were carried out by this very ombudsman that we have in Botswana. I was new in the office. It was a bit of a shock, but I allowed myself to learn and go through that process. So in that report, which is in the public domain, it was very clear that my institution has colluded with another institution. So what does that mean to you as a leader? I had to listen, because in the case of Botswana Qualification Authority, it's the students who come first, the learners. And so you can imagine if there's something that they're not happy with, and they go to the ombudsman's office, or the Motsereganyi, as you call it in Setswana, the mediator's office, they go there with all the expectation that they will be assisted, that their rights will be recognized. So then I got the report, and the first thing that I had to do is to listen to the students and also to act as a team and do our level best to close the gaps that were identified. But I think I need to point out that the terrain of investigations is not easy, primarily because of lack of data. And if there's any little of it, in many cases, it's unreliable. So I think in our institutions, data keeping, record keeping, how we protect that very data that we collect is still a bit of a challenge that we need to work on. Because without that data, it is difficult for me. I'm a researcher, so I know what I mean by saying I need something. I need that evidence. And so I can imagine for the Ombudsman's office what they go through if information is missing or is lacking. So those are some of the things that I think I had to really realize and say to myself, I need to do something better in my organization to make sure that we collect data, we observe the privacy laws, and we ensure that we have the framework of how data has to be kept, protected, and also how that data has to be stored, and how that data has to be disposed of. Because these are the principles that one has to make sure that they cover. So the theme of this expo speaks to trusted institutions, righting injustices, which I think in my experience, we have been striving so hard as BQA to right the wrongs. And also making sure that we bolster quality governance. And like I said earlier, it doesn't come easy. It comes with a cost. The other speaker who spoke before me said that sometimes you are challenged because certain decisions that you take involve certain individuals, and you really wonder how best am I going to do it. But in my experience, I realized that it's my navigation skills that have helped me to really pursue what I believed was right for the students, and even what I believed was right for the economy. Because the social ills touches government officials, politicians, business leaders, and journalists alike. This corruption that I think we speak about almost every day, it destroys national economies. It undermines social stabilities and erodes public trust. So the correlation between good governance and economic development is well established. We all know that. And so one other thing that I think I use a lot in our organization, within our experience, is the ICT that we all love and we are here to use. It enables us to do business, but at the same time, it offers promise for revolutionizing public service delivery, but at the same time, they can also create new opportunities for corruption, such as forensic fraud, fraudulent credentials or qualifications, fake institutions under the disguise of online schooling. These are things that affect my institution. And these are things that affect our morale as a society. So we love that ICT, but at the same time, it brings a lot of challenges for us. We have the dark web, cryptocurrencies, or digital public services, where information sometimes is not used in the right form of things. So corruption hinders economic development, distorts markets, and damages integrity of both public and private sector. So for an institution the likes of BQA, we work with private, we work with the public. But the mandate makes sure that it takes me to the student. The learner is the center of everything that we do. We try our best to make sure that the learner is assisted. We all know that many governments are adopting tougher laws and establishing or strengthening anti-corruption units. Issues such as illicit financial flows, asset recovery, transparency of beneficial ownership are receiving growing attention. However, corruption still remains the obstacle. So in my experience, going through these claims that were made or recommendations made by ombudsmen and other investigations, I had to, as an individual, as the head of the institution, go an extra mile to even go to courts myself and take an oath to protect good governance. Because the title of the report from the ombudsman was saying maladministrations. Rules were not observed. So I had to ensure that in my coming and assisting the nation, I had to do the right thing. And the right thing was to pursue, to follow, and get to the point of going to courts and protecting the position of a learner who was disadvantaged. But in many cases, sometimes you don't do it as heads of institutions. Maybe we give it to our HR departments or we give to our external lawyers. But in this case, it was me who went to court and said, yes, indeed, it was wrong for the students maybe to be given half-baked system. So to address these challenges, we must include in the Constitution's laws that give the public the power to participate and engage. Engage in locally owned and led processes to assess corruption risks and design mitigation strategies. We should also use tools as political economy analysis to identify corruption problems and potential allies for reform. Implement anti-corruption strategies that promote transparency and accountability. Include values, integrity, and anti-corruption education in school curricula. I think in that way, we can, at least for the next generation that is not here, some 100 years to come, ensure that they will have a good understanding of the wrongs that comes out from a system that does not respect governance. So in conclusion, the fight against corruption requires a multifaceted approach involving all sectors of society. Being accountable taps on the individual's ability to be honest to the system, and being honest to himself or herself or themselves. If you are not honest to yourself, issues of accountability are going to be second in your list. So that is what I experience in my career life as well as in my personal life. That you have to speak to yourself. It touches the inner core of who you are. Then you'll be able to respond to the system and make sure that you correct the wrong and make sure that everyone is protected and are loved and the human rights are anchored on good principles. So as we proceed with this expo, I look forward to insightful discussions on how we can meet the challenges of righting injustices and bolstering quality governance in our diverse institutions. With those words, thank you very much.
Saying to Prof, I hope she was not intimidated when I indicated she's left with 4 minutes. Immediately she said she was concluding. But thank you very much, Prof. Esteemed delegates, we are left with about 40 minutes for discussion. I was taking copious notes here to try and summarize or lift out the salient points that have been touched upon by all the speakers. But I think if I attempt to do that, I'll be eating into discussion time. I really want to, from the outset, open the floor for questions and answers. And please, the way I want us to approach this, you stand up, say your name, and also pose your question and say to whom that question is directed. I think it will assist us in that way. So can we have any roving mics here? Roving mic. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm advised that the mics are on the table there. So I'm now opening the floor, and you can actually pose your question to any of the eminent speakers that have taken us through the topics we were discussing. Okay, maybe whilst you are still thinking, because I see no hands, let me summarize quickly the salient points. We started with a presentation from Honorable Chande, the Ombudsman of Mozambique. He took us through the conflict in his country and peace-building efforts there. And the initial peace accord was signed in 1992. And subsequent to that, there was further conflict between Frelimo and Renamo, which was ended by the Maputo Agreement that led to the integration of the Renamo forces. He then went to pose a question as to what role can Ombuds institution play in peace building. And of course, he's posing this question because Ombuds institutions are mainly about addressing issues of maladministration. And therefore, he ended up by saying we need to enhance the role of ombudsman in peace building. Of course, Honorable Aline Brock, first she clarified that the topic she was angling was rather on the question of whether women are better mediators than men, and concluded with the fact that there's no scientific basis for that. You know, that actually people are nurtured and with characteristics of mediation, and actually it depends on how they respond to those to be able to be good mediators. And then also indicated that broader mediation actually is, should address issues of silencing the guns, and took us through the fact that there are two forms of mediation, the formal one, which is called track 1, and the informal one, track 2. And said according to the UN women mediators, according to the UN, women mediators assist in achieving lasting peace, which I really took to heart. And that there is power in coming together, in enhancing peace, and that is the experience of actually Liberian women. And that also when women are involved, they tend to focus on systemic issues, which means looking for lasting solutions to problems. And also indicated that, you know, for women to thrive in a male-dominated situation, or rather, in male-dominated situation, women find it difficult to thrive because of issues of gender discrimination. And finally, that there is a general belief amongst men that women are not good in track 1 mediation, which is actually not a fact. And welcome the fact that in the DRC, women are now being taken through mediation training. I hope I summarized the point. And of course, our next speaker was the Deputy IG from Uganda, who was taking us through the organization of the inspectorate, including issues of the mandate that covers 3 distinct and yet interrelated functions. And emphasize that the inspectorate is actually an independent body, and this is actually covered in the Constitution, and that deputies are given the same powers as the Inspector General. Something that I find difficult. We're listening to a presentation from Gambia and said, you know, this can sometimes lead to people fighting if the roles are not properly delineated, you know. But in your situation, you seem to manage things very well. And of course, also emphasize the fact that ambiguity of roles tends to generate conflict amongst the leaders in institutions. And lastly, the Prof took us through the mandate of the Botswana Qualification Authority, and emphasized that power dynamics can actually diminish any individual's quest to actually lodge a complaint, and that education really is an equalizer of all, and emphasize the fact that we cannot occupy certain posts without unlearning some of the issues that will make us not effective in those posts, and the importance of record keeping and correlation between good governance and economic prosperity, which is well established, and of course that the fight against corruption requires a multi-party approach. I hope then with lifting out those salient points, I've reminded you of the discussion we had, and we can now pose our questions. General, please, ready.
Thank you, General. It's Oswald Reddy, the Western Cape Police Ombudsman. I want to start from the last speaker. The question relates to foreign or international qualifications. Are they accredited in Botswana? And secondly, do you have levels on your NCQF? For example, in South Africa, PhD will be a NQF level 10. I just want to understand how it's done in Botswana. The second question is to Honorable Ombudsman Chande. I wanted to establish whether you have any powers to investigate politicians. So if the President, the ministers, or the members of Parliament are involved in maladministration, do you have powers to investigate them? Because you indicated that for conflict resolution, you have to be neutral and not get involved in politics. And thirdly, to Honorable Anne, I wanted to see, in terms of appointment, do you have to apply for the position of the deputy, or are you nominated by who? And then who do you account to? If you are independent and you don't sort of have a oversight body, do you account to someone? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, General. Those are wonderful presentations that have opened our eyes. My attention is just attracted by the presentation made by the delegation from Uganda. And I'm trying to understand and ask for explanation whether the load being carried by them is not too much. Because from what she had stated, they are fighting corruption and they are at the same time the ombudsman's responsibility of Uganda. Is that a special case in Uganda or in other countries? They have the same, because what we have in Nigeria, different organizations are responsible for handling those. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take the last, before we proceed. I recognize your hand there at the back.